Have you ever heard of magic eye books where it's a random pattern and there's a hidden image within it, and if you look just right, you can see it and it becomes 3D? Well, through Gestalt's laws, we learn that eyes take shortcuts. Your eyes account for over 50% of the sensory input you receive. So with touch, hearing, taste, all of those fun things, your eyes take over 50% of that information. We all have eyes we use to see, and it has been found that we all organize information in similar ways. Sometimes our eyes take shortcuts, which these shortcuts are called Gestalt's laws. Oh my gosh. Okay, So we'll start with the first law. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So when we first look at this picture, we see a face. But if we look closer, we can see that there's horses, there's birds, there's actually a myriad of things that are coming together to create that face. But our eyes take the shortcut and just see the image as a whole. Our second law is called pragnance, or simplicity. We tend to see the simplest solution whenever we can. So when we see a pattern, it's broken down into multiple parts. So when we see the X, we just think, oh, it's an X, versus there's a line slashing, there's two separate lines, or there's a two curved line. So we always see the simplest solution. Our third law is called good continuation. So this is when our eyes see beyond what is actually there. So in this picture, we see a tree with the branches behind it. The branches are not actually drawn continuously, but our eyes, we all know the branches go behind the tree. It's one huge thing, not just separated parts. Another law is similarity. So Gestalt's theory states that things that share visual, that share color, shape, size, or texture or value, they seem to belong together, and so we see that as one. So here we have circles and squares. The squares are the same shape, and so they tend to be seen as one object. So we see the plus with 4 separate quadrants of 4 circles put together. Oh, that's similarity. Oh, that's fine. Okay. So our next rule is proximity. So things that appear closer are seen as one object. So in this one, we have the full square box with all the circles, and we see that as one. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, we see 3 separate, distinct boxes. Another example is how far apart the shapes are. So in this one, we see clearly that we see columns versus rows, because the columns are closer together than the rows are. And on the left-hand side of the screen, we see the rows, and those are closer together, so we see that. Next, we have common fate or closure. What this is when objects move together, they are seen as one object. So instead of seeing 8 individual dots, we see 4 and 4 move. We see 4 dots move up and 4 dots move down. We see it as 2 separate groups because our eyes take that shortcut. This principle is common fate or closure continued. So what we see is, this is kind of a mix of continuation as well, is in object A, we see a triangle overlaid the circles. So the circles are underneath and the triangle is above. When in reality, there's not actually a triangle there. There's just circles with a pie piece cut out. In C, we see a sun with different streaks coming up off of it, but it's just a bunch of shapes put together. And then in D, we can see the snake, even though it's not connected. Our last principle is familiarity. So things that we know are generally what we see first. So in this picture here, we see two horsemen in a forest. Because that's what our minds are most familiar with. When in reality, if we look closer, there's actually 12 different faces within the picture. So down here, you can see that the rocks make a face, and then they're all throughout it, but just looking quickly, our eyes don't see that. They take the shortcut of, oh, I see the trees, I see the horse, that's what I'm going for, it's just horsemen in a picture. So in conclusion, Gestalt's laws of similarity, simplicity, common fate, familiarity, proximity, good continuation, and the whole all help us understand how our brains are interpreting what we see. The mind is a tricky thing, especially when it comes to perception.